right, we are on the internet. Mary asks John, if Citizens United was to be overturned in the near future, how would that affect the election process? Well, I'd save money.
Well, I can tell you what happened in Montana this last election cycle. We saw more money spent in Montana than ever before, by far. More ads run between June through Election Day than...
You're talking about on the Senate race?
I'm talking about on our Senate race, on my Senate race.
Who did you run against?
I ran against a congressman named Dennis Rehberg. And I can tell you the bad part about all this is I believe in transparency in government. I think that we should have as much sunlight as possible on all levels, legislative, executive, judicial, the whole works. Elections are a part of government. This money comes in, we don't know where it's come from. We don't know if it's corporations that are domiciled in this country or outside this country, which would be patently illegal.
Could be China.
And they continue to put in money to try to, in my case, make me into something I'm not. For example, one of the ads had five fingers on my left hand. Okay, those babies have been gone for 47 years, okay? But truth is, they didn't care about the facts. They tried to define you as something you're not. I don't think it resulted in a better informed voter.
Well, how did that affect...
In fact, a less informed voter. I think it's just proof of the fact they didn't do their research because they didn't care. They did a lot of other stuff, too, that was far more heinous than that. But the bottom line is
no one's voting
United,
for you because of the number of fingers you have.
They might.
Really?
Well, you never know.
Like, he's got all his fingers. I'm not voting for him. But what a terrible attack to make on you, John, accusing you of having 10 fingers.
Well, you know,
I will not put up with that in this country.
But the fact is that there is so much money coming into these elections, and we don't know where it's coming from, and there's agendas behind all of it.
No,
and it ought to be transparent at the very least. That doesn't mean we have to overturn Citizens United, but if you just made it transparent so you know what corporations were putting in money, just like the folks who donate to me. That's what needs to happen.
All right. So, for Howard Dean, other than universal health care, which you have in Vermont, right?
Close. Oh, for people under 18, we've had for 20 years, but we're not there yet.
What policies that you've implemented other than that would you like to see implemented federally?
Well, we did the first civil unions bill in the country, which turned out to be same-sex marriage, and I think we ought to have that. But the purpose of what we did was to make sure everybody had equal rights. And until we get rid of DOMA, everybody's not going to have equal rights. I think it's
Defense of Marriage Act.
Yeah, the Defense of Marriage Act. It basically discriminates against people who are not allowed to get married, which they're still not allowed to in 41 states. So I'd like to see that. The most important thing we could possibly do in this country, which I haven't heard one word about it for a long time, is invest in small children between the ages of 0 and 3, because most of the education problems have nothing to do with bad teachers. It's because between 0 and 3, we don't take care of our kids the way they need to be taken care of.
What should happen? Boy, that's really young, though. What happens between 0 and 3? I was just crawling on the floor and
the kids,
playing in my poop.
The kids that come from families that are really stressed, single parents, people with drug problems at home, and so forth and so on, are the kids that end up in prison 18 years later. And if you don't get them by 3, it's an uphill fight because brain plasticity changes at 3, and it's much less flexible.
Start actually teaching them stuff?
No, you don't put them in school. But actually, what you do is you work with the parents to help them become more employable, to help them actually learn how to take care of children. Your 15-year-old who has a baby is not necessarily going to be able to mother that baby the way the baby needs to be done.
But I mean, what are you doing with the 2-year-old?
Well, there are simple things like just having books in the home is a really important factor
and
that
a lot of homes don't.
When you're
exactly.
And reading to your children every night, whether you think they understand it or not, makes a big difference. I'm not kidding. The average, this actually doesn't have anything to do with race, it has to do with poverty. The average middle-class kid has a vocabulary of somewhere around 500 to 1,000 words when they get into kindergarten. When the average poor kid has a vocabulary that's about 1/5 that size.
Wow.
And it's just from parents who read to their kids, who reason with their kids, and talk to them about why they shouldn't be doing. I understand the kid doesn't exactly understand everything you're saying it too, but that's how they learn.
Right, I know it gets in there. Okay. Has social media been friend or foe to politics? Huh. Well, it's certainly friend to the winners. It's been a friend to Obama. You, Howard, really, I mean, started that whole trend. I mean, when you ran, you were the first one to...
I appreciate the credit. What we did was we hired a bunch of really smart 23-year-olds, and we actually...
that was smart.
We actually listened to what they had to say. That's how we did it.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, my friend Al Franken had a 23-year-old advising him. I used to ask him on the show, and he said, "No, my 23-year-old won't let me."
It's allowed.
Really, Al, we've known each other all these years. I mean, before this fucking kid was born. And he won't let you on my show. No, and it worked. He got elected. He was right.
It's given grassroots voters across the country the opportunity to be involved in campaigns, and hopefully it will only expand more and more every cycle.
We should be able to vote on the internet, too. Wouldn't that be great?
That's going to happen sooner rather than later.
I think there's some states looking at it.
Yeah, would not be good for the Republicans. Let's be honest, you don't want that. You don't even want them coming to the polls, let alone being able to vote on the internet. I mean, Christ, that would be the death of you.
But I think it's a good goal. I think it's a good goal to get to a point where a higher turnout election is something that Republicans can get winnable. Win the argument, then win the vote.
Yeah.
That's the Margaret Thatcher quote.
There you go. Okay. Howard, you are all for going over the fiscal cliff. What do you think is missing in the deal that was made?
What they did was they cut off future tax revenues. You can't balance the budget without both revenues and cuts. And the problem is, and the last time there was a balanced budget, Bill Clinton was president. We need to go back ultimately to Bill Clinton's tax levels. And what the fiscal cliff deal did, which was an atrocity, which was a big win for the Republicans, I might add, is they raised taxes on rich people. That's all fine and good. That doesn't provide anywhere near the amount of revenue you need. What we need to do is all pay the same taxes we paid when Bill Clinton was president, and then we need to cut $1.2 trillion out. And the best way, we're never going to get a chance as Democrats to cut the defense budget if we don't go over the cliff, because there's too many special interests on both sides that don't want to cut the defense budget. The defense industry is not stupid. They have plants in about 7/8 of all the districts.
A giant jobs program.
So it is
somehow when it comes to defense, it's not bad to say, well, there's jobs. Get a different job.
But the sequester part is still, so even though they went over the cliff, the sequester still.
I'm hoping we're going to go do the sequester, because I don't think there's not going to be a bill that Democrats are going to like that's going to be better than the sequester.
But maybe America
still take a bite out of the deficit.
I think the problem with the whole deal that was done on New Year's Eve is we don't put the issue behind us.
That's right.
We're never going to deal with any other issue until we get the deficit and debt thing solved. It's going to be front and center every day, and it's been front and center every day for 18 months.
Don't you think taxes have to go up on everybody?
They did.
They do.
They did.
Well,
the Social Security tax went up from 4% back up to 6%. So for that family who wanted to go out on a Friday night to go to a movie, they don't have that money now.
Let me just be blunt about this. Look, if that family wants to go out to the movie instead of have Social Security, they have that choice. Well, if you want these programs, you got to pay for them.
To say that not everybody's taxes went up is not true. That's the great failing of this. One of the great failings of this deal is that everybody's taxes went up. And it was sold as only the rich were going to pay more taxes. That's not true.
But it's mostly true. You're right.
They are paying a huge percentage. But this was a president who said, I'm not going to raise, I'm only going to raise taxes on millionaires. Then it went down to $250. And then Republicans got it up to $400,000. But everybody's taxes went up. Let's be clear about that.
The FICA tax was reduced as a result of the economy tanking out. This was a tax holiday that was put into effect when Obama got into office, and it was taken off when Obama was in office. So it wasn't like he was increasing taxes from day one, as long as we're going to go.
Senator, with all due respect, people who paid less taxes that are now paying more taxes see their taxes have gone up.
Yeah, but I mean, basically what we had under Clinton as opposed to Bush, if we just got rid of all the Bush tax cuts, that's $4 trillion in revenue. And somehow under Clinton, we had peace and prosperity. Somehow under Clinton, we had a surplus at the end of it.
We didn't have the level of spending that we have now as well under President Clinton.
I agree. This is a revenue problem and a spending problem. But that's what the fiscal cliff was going to do. It was going to raise taxes on everybody, back to where Clinton was. And it was going to cut a hell of a lot of money out of the budget. We need to do both.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, panel. We will see you next week.
Meal Time with Bill Maher, Friday night at 10. Ask Bill and his guests your questions right after the show at HBO.com.